Chapter 34, Starting Fresh. Alicia and Diane barged into my room early the next morning to wake me up for breakfast. "Hurry," Diane said as I gulped down the lumpy oatmeal they had fixed me. We drove to the mountain parking lot. I backed the truck up to the snow pile, and we dragged the sled out of the back. I started the engine to let it warm up while we put on our snow gear. Then we all crowded onto the seat and rode away. We drove to the clearing, and I let each sister take a turn driving around by herself while I chatted with the other and caught up on school and what books they were reading and which of their friends were being nice and which ones weren't. The clearing felt empty and big with only one snowmobile in it, but I liked it this way. All the former tracks had been completely erased. Everything had turned fresh, had become a brand new start, as easy as that. I can do that, I told myself, thinking about Annetta. I can just start over. Now that I know the rules, the game would work out much better. Once Alicia and Diane had both taken a few turns driving, I checked the gas tank and found it nearly empty. "That's going to be it for today," I told the girls. They each took short turns driving us back to the truck, and we loaded it up. It was 2 o'clock when we reached town again and pulled off near the highway near Becca's. "Let's stop for hot chocolate," Alicia suggested. "We're almost home," I said. "We can get some there." "Please," Diane begged. "I'm so cold." The 5-year-old was so cute with that desperate look on her face that I almost gave in. But I was starting over, and I didn't feel like doing it with the complication of explaining everything to Netta and my little sisters at the same time. We kept driving, and I saw Annetta's car in the parking lot along with a dozen others. "Oh," Diane said, "I was supposed to tell you Natalie stopped by last night." "Who?" I asked. "Nanette," Alicia corrected her. "Annetta?" I asked. "Yeah, that's it." I stepped on the brake and turned the truck around. "Where are we going?" Alicia asked. "Do you still want hot chocolate?" I asked. "Yes!" they both shouted happily. Knowing Annetta had come by last night after all made me want to see her again. I could cut her a little slack, but that didn't mean I was changing my plans. "I think she likes you," Alicia said. "Oh yeah? Why's that?" "'Cause I asked her why she's not your girlfriend, and she didn't say anything." "Hey, it's Spencer!" someone cried as we walked inside the diner. Half the tables were full. I had never seen the place so busy. "The hero," said someone else at the counter. "Whatever he orders, I'm paying for it," said a third. Everyone was in high holiday spirits. I waved and said hello to the crowd of strangers, feeling like a celebrity, and walked to a corner booth with my sisters. Alicia and Diane both wanted to sit by me, so I scooted behind the table to the middle. "What's everyone talking about?" Alicia asked, looking confused and curious. "Remember that story Grandma told you last night?" "Well, it's true, and that's the girl right over there," I said, pointing to Amy, who was taking an order at another table. She finished and walked over to us. "Long time no see," she said. It had been a full 2 days now. "What can I get you all?" 3 hot chocolates, please," Alicia ordered. "Large," Diane added. "Did my brother really save your life?" Alicia asked. "Yep, he sure did," Amy answered, smiling happily at her. "It was just like being in a movie." I introduced the 3 of them, and someone called Amy to ask when their food would be ready. "Gotta run," she said. "Nice to meet you all." Annetta walked over to our table a minute later with 3 mugs of hot chocolate on a tray. She had been in the kitchen and wore an apron and her hair in a ponytail. "Hi, guys," she said, setting our mugs on the table. "Diane, did you want extra whipped cream?" "Yes," Diane answered excitedly. "Thanks for dropping by," Netta said. "Well, my sisters begged till I had to give in." "What have you been up to?" she asked. "Oh," I answered. "Life's just going on. The family's all showing up now, so we keep pretty busy there." I wanted to downplay the fact that she hadn't come till so late last night. There was no reason to make a big deal about it. "Sorry I missed you last night," Netta added. "Where were you?" "Just out for a walk. It's nice out there at night, so quiet and all." That should do it. Make it sound like I didn't even mind, like I hadn't even missed her that much, like I would be all right on my own, too. That should put her mind at ease. She looked into my eyes then, and I knew she was trying to read what was there, just to make sure, to read me deep down inside where it's impossible to lie. "I have to get back to the kitchen before I burn something," she said, "but I get off in half an hour. Will I see you soon?" "Sure," I answered nonchalantly. "I'll call you sometime tonight." I watched her walk back to the kitchen and noticed that the bounce had disappeared from her step. It's probably been a long day for her, I thought, looking around the room full of customers. We finished our drinks and walked toward the cash register to pay. "No, no, no," said the man at the bar, shaking a finger at me. "I'm picking up your tab." "And I'm covering the tip," said the man next to him. He slapped me on the shoulder, and I thanked them both and walked outside. Allie and Di walked around to the passenger door, and I was just opening mine when the diner door opened and Amy called to me. "Hey," she said, walking over. "What's the matter with you?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, why are you treating my sister like that?" she said. "You're breaking her heart." "Well, I don't know how much she's told you," I said, "but if she's just planning to get on with her life as soon as I'm gone anyway, I don't know what the big deal is. Besides, she said she was coming over yesterday after work, but she didn't show up till 11 o'clock. What am I supposed to think? How am I supposed to react?" "You don't know what you're talking about," Amy accused, shaking her head, her eyes flashing. "I know that life's not fair, and sometimes you just have to grin and bear it." "No, life's not fair," Amy agreed. "But don't you ever let that be your fault. Netta came by late last night because she didn't get off till after closing. Jim didn't show up for work, and she had to cover for him. With all these crowds stopping in off the highway, she couldn't very well let me handle it alone." "I didn't know," I said, slightly humbled. "I'm sorry." "Please go talk to her," she said. Her eyes were half pleading, half demanding. I nodded my head and walked back toward the door. Amy opened my door the rest of the way. "Hey, do you two want a donut?" "Yeah," my sister shouted, piling excitedly back out of the truck. "Spencer's back," someone yelled again as I walked back inside. "I'm paying this time," someone else said. I couldn't help but smile. I walked into the kitchen and found Annette tending to half a dozen different items on the grill and elsewhere. "So are you different now that you're a hero?" she asked. This time I could see by the look in her eyes that she was hurting inside. "Please, let's not talk about that. I'm so tired of hearing about it when it was really nothing." "What do you mean, nothing?" she asked. "I mean, I just went out there and found Amy. It was just something I did. I've thought about this enough to decide that your actions don't make you great. It's what's inside. So I'm the same person I always was, and I don't know why anyone should treat me any differently now than before." Annetta looked up from the sizzling grill. "You mean it really didn't change you at all?" "Well, maybe a little. Any experience does that. That's what you told me. But I'm pretty much the same person, so no, it didn't." I watched a tear well up in Annetta's eyes. I couldn't tell if she looked happy or sad. "What's wrong now?" I asked. I wasn't doing a very good job of starting over. I couldn't help but care, but didn't know how to do it from a distance. And if Annetta really cared, as I was beginning to guess, then why would I want to start over anyway? If I only knew what she really thought, if I could only make sense of all the mixed, confusing messages she was sending out. "Well, if," Annetta began, "if you didn't change, then why do you act so different?" "I'm sorry I've been so distant," I told her. "I just couldn't stay close when I realized that you weren't all that serious about us." "What do you mean?" she asked, shaking her head and speaking slowly. "What are you talking about?" "When I didn't know why you didn't come by earlier last night, but Amy told me about that. I got thinking about everything you said about getting on with our lives and me finding other girls to date and how you'd be just fine and how we should just trust things to work out on their own. So you didn't sound that serious about it." Now hot tears poured freely down both of her soft cheeks. "I never meant it that way," she nearly sobbed, looking happy and sad all at the same time. "I never ever meant I wasn't serious about you." She started to lift her arms around my neck but stopped short and backed off again. "When I said we have to trust life to work out, I meant we have to trust it to bring us back together again someday." The truth began to sink in slowly. The little knot I carried in my stomach since Sunday afternoon loosened a bit. "And everything else I said," Netta explained, "was only so you wouldn't worry about me." She stood facing me, spatula in hand, burgers sizzling on the grill, waiting for my response. "I guess I got everything all wrong," I said. Netta took another step toward me. "Does this mean," she asked hopefully, "that everything can be all right between us again?" "Yeah," I said quietly, "and I'm sorry." She threw her arms around my neck then, and laughter came out like a sob. I felt her wet cheek on my neck and held her tight. "You really haven't changed, have you?" "How would I change?" I asked. "I thought all that attention had gone to your head. I was beginning to think I had misjudged you all along, but I was right the first time. You really are wonderful." I didn't know how she could possibly think so highly of me, but I wasn't about to argue. Alicia and Diane walked into the kitchen then, and smiles spread slowly across their faces. "You'd better flip those burgers before they burn," I told Netta. "If I'm not at your place in an hour," Netta said, "call me." "I will," I promised. "Hey, what's the holdup in here?" Amy shouted, walking through the door. "Where are my orders?" Thanks, I whispered to her on my way out, touching her shoulder. She punched me back and grinned. That's better, she said. Are you sure she's not your girlfriend? Alicia asked on the ride home. Yeah, I guess she is, I answered. We got home and I read another chapter of Les Mis. This time, the lesson was different. This time, I learned that no matter what happens, no matter what life throws at you, you can always find or create moments of extreme beauty by refusing to give in to the unfairness and uncertainties and day-to-day challenges of everyday life. Chapter 35, Time Flies. Annetta came by an hour later, and everything went better from then on. My heart ached at first for the wasted 2 days we could have spent together. Time is always limited and precious, but I felt acutely aware of its passing with only a week and a half left before school would begin. We spent our time playing with our families and talking, getting to know each other as well as possible, and just enjoying each other's company. I pored through Annetta's photo albums, and we spent a little time reading in the library together. We rarely got more than a few pages into whatever we were reading, though, before something sparked an idea that got us talking until the library closed or she had to go to work. Do you like reading fiction or nonfiction best? Annetta asked me one afternoon. I never really thought about it, I answered. Why? What about you? It depends, she said. I like whatever makes me excited about things I could do with my life. Like what? Like going new places and trying new things, she said. Nonfiction's best for that. It sounds so easy when you're just reading along. It's inspiring. And fiction's best, if it's good, to get away from all the serious things in life and envision something even better than reality. I get all caught up in some imaginary world, and then I get all relaxed and ready to take off running again. And which do you want most now? Now I'm torn. I'd love to be climbing a volcano in Hawaii with you right now, but since I can't, I'm content to keep on reading and forget about the snow outside for a while. Sometimes I'd go to Becca's with her and help serve the crowd of people driving by on the highway on their way to visit relatives for the holidays. I had never realized how interesting total strangers could be. That's the best part of the job, Annetta told me. The next time I saw Jim there, I put 2 and 2 together and realized he had skipped work Monday to drive to Evanston and then fix Grandpa's snowmobile and thanked him for it. He denied knowing anything about it, but I knew it was him. If you don't want me to say anything about it, I won't, I promised. But I really appreciate that. You're a good man. He gave me a slight nod and went on with his work. Once all my cousins arrived, we drove into the hills and brought back a Christmas tree for the house. The family spent Christmas Eve together reading the Christmas story in Luke and singing around the old piano. Christmas morning came early, with young cousins too excited to sleep running through the large house as soon as the regulation "don't wake anyone up until 7 o'clock" had passed. The most notable gift was the computer that Dad and Mom got Grandma. Now we can all keep in touch easily, Mom said. It's all set up for Facebook and email and video chat, and the whole family's connections are already programmed in. I don't know, Grandma said. This is all so new for me. It's easy, Dad said. And if you have any questions, Spencer will be around to help you, or you can call us. Grandma nodded her head. You're going to love it once you get used to it, Mom added, and we'll all love hearing from you more often. I don't mean to be a party pooper, I began, but how are we going to connect this to the internet? With only antiquated phone lines and no regular cable or 100 gigabit fiber optic lines within 50 miles, the only apparent option was dial-up. And I smiled when I thought of the town party line filled with static and beeping of an old modem connection. A satellite dish is scheduled to be installed tomorrow, Dad explained, and we'll connect to it with this. He reached behind the couch and lifted a simple brown cardboard box with a modem in it. I took it from him and opened the box, then instantly noticed a minor problem. This is just a cable modem, I pointed out. It doesn't have wireless, so we'll need to get a wireless router too so we can connect our other devices. Actually, Dad countered, we already took that into consideration and decided against it. This is the only chance we ever get to fully unplug, and we don't want the kids staring at their screens all day and night and missing out on one another. Good idea, I nodded in agreement. Grandma gave me a framed watercolor she had painted over the summer of green mountain meadows and beautiful pastel wildflowers, and she surprised me with her succinct ability to summarize the complex idea I had struggled so long to understand. In one corner of the painting, she wrote, "The meaning of life is to live." Amy wrote a beautiful poem about falling snow and asked me to critique it. I taught her a few tricks about imagery and rhythm that I picked up in school, and her revision showed real promise as a writer. "Ever think of becoming an English major? Should I?" she asked. "Just keep it in mind for now," I told her. Chapter 36. Enduring Questions. The remaining days of Christmas vacation passed by quickly. Most of my relatives went home, but my mom and little sisters decided to stay till New Year's. I divided my time between my family, the Halls, and Becca's when Netta had to work. We rode snowmobiles, took the kids to the hot springs, and stayed up late talking, snuggling, and reading together. Two unsettling questions plagued me when I found myself alone or other distractions faded at the end of each day. First, what would happen when I went back to school? I felt like a completely different person than before. I no longer felt shy and self-conscious. Would I carry this change back with me or quickly revert to my old ways? Had I truly changed, or was it just being around Netta that made me feel so different? "What are you thinking about?" Netta asked one night as she sat with my arms wrapped around her, staring at the glowing embers in her living room fireplace. "Oh," I said, "nothing." Netta twisted around to look me in the eyes momentarily. "Nothing what?" I began. "Remember when I told you that I used to be really shy and stuff?" She nodded. "Well, the truth is, that was about 2 weeks ago." Netta twisted around again and gave me a surprised look. "Whatever?" she asked incredulously. "I'm serious," I affirmed. "And what I was thinking about just now is whether I've really changed or if I'll revert the moment I'm away from you." Netta leaned back against me and pulled my arms more tightly around her. "So it's a question of conversion," she observed. "Are you merely influenced by your circumstances, or has a deep and permanent change occurred?" I didn't know. How could I? Did the fact that I kept asking this question mean that I hadn't completely changed? Certainly I hadn't conquered all my insecurities yet, but it seemed like a good start. This new me felt effortless and natural, and memories of my old feelings had already grown hazy. The change felt deep, even if not complete. "If it's deep, does that make it permanent?" I asked. "Yes," she answered, as if nothing could be more obvious. Second, what would happen when I went back to school? What would become of my relationship with Netta? We could call and email and video chat and follow each other on Facebook and Instagram, but would that feel the same? And what did our relationship mean exactly anyway? Would the remaining few days give us enough time to figure that out? I didn't know, and the only way I knew to find out was to wait and see. "So, Spencer," Annetta asked me over dinner at the Halls one evening, "have you figured out the meaning of life yet?" "I think so," I said. Amy smiled and put down her fork. Mr. Hall raised an eyebrow. "Essentially, meaning is the feeling of satisfaction you experience from participating purposefully in life," I explained. "I thought the meaning of life was supposed to tell you how to get that satisfaction," Amy said. "Probably a lot of people are looking for that kind of answer," I continued, "but it's different for everyone, you see, and it changes from day to day. Because we all have these different talents and needs to fulfill, so what provides meaning one day might not work as well the next week. So the meaning of life is just to participate in life? I'd call that the purpose of life," I clarified, "or a purpose, and meaning is what you get when you do." "What do you mean, a purpose?" "I mean, there are lots of perspectives to tell you the purpose of life. Like at school, the purpose is to learn or develop critical thinking skills or get trained on how to earn a living. If you're talking about religion, then the purpose is to have faith and become enlightened and converted and love your enemies and make the world a better place, even if it's just by changing yourself for the better. If it's a weekend, then maybe the purpose of life, the way to have a satisfying, meaningful experience, is to take a memorable road trip to somewhere beautiful with good friends. So participating purposefully in life tells you to get out there and get busy, but doesn't tell you exactly how. You have to kind of figure that out for yourself. Interesting, said Mr. Hall. The next afternoon, when business slowed down at Becca's, Amy joined me in the booth where I sat reading. You've ruined my life, she said with a frustrated smile. I did? I asked, curious to know how I had managed to accomplish such a feat without realizing it. Now I'm thinking about meaning and purpose all the time, and Spencer, she said, waving a hand toward the dining room and kitchen, this is not it. It's driving me crazy. I had to smile at Amy's earnestness and the way she took things so to heart. I loved the way she could take on a challenge or a new idea and dive all the way in, holding nothing back. I remembered her impressive acting skills, the aggressive way she drove a snowmobile, and her spunky way of speaking her mind with no inhibitions whatsoever. I loved the way she approached life with her eyes and mind and heart and the throttle all wide open. Well, I pointed out, it beats living in a concentration camp, right? Amy exhaled in frustration, her lips puckering into a slight pout. How's that supposed to help me? Probably the most famous book ever written on the meaning of life, I explained, was written by a guy who survived one of the worst concentration camps of World War II. He observed that the people who survived there were able to find meaning in the smallest things, even in the midst of terrible suffering. For example, some prisoners, even though they were starving to death, would share their food with their friends. That mattered to them. It made a difference. It had purpose. It lessened the suffering of others, if only minutely. And perceiving that purpose made it meaningful. And even that much meaning gave them a reason to go on living. And those were the sort of people who survived. Amy's frustration seemed to ease as she considered how serving meals could make a difference. A lot of people work just for the paycheck, I pointed out. But if I'm relieving hunger and making people happy, she mused, then that's a lot more meaningful. Exactly, I agreed. Focus on the journey that's always right in front of you instead of some distant destination. How come you're so smart? She asked. I shrugged my shoulders as if to say, am I? I was kind of hoping you'd advise me to drive straight to Mexico and live on the beach for the rest of my life, she admitted with a smile. I could make you some good lemonade there, you know. She winked at me, then stood up and went back to work with the bounce restored to her step. Amy told me about your meaning of life idea, Jim said Saturday afternoon as we stopped for lunch after a morning of snowmobiling. What did you think? I asked. I like it, he said. And I think if the meaning of Christmas is to give and receive and be grateful, and if that's so satisfying and everybody knows it, then why can't that be the meaning of life all year? Good point, I agreed. Maybe the meaning of Christmas is the meaning of life. Maybe it's just too hard to keep up the effort unless everyone agrees to participate at the same time. Jim nodded thoughtfully and took another bite of his sandwich. Chapter 37, Love. I disagree, Amy told me as we set the table for Sunday dinner. With what? I asked, smiling at the abrupt way she blurted out whatever thought happened across her mind. I don't think that the meaning of Christmas is to give and receive. Oh yeah? I asked. Then what? I say it's to love. I nodded. Good point. If you give without love, then the gift doesn't have the same effect, does it, on the giver or the recipient? Yeah, Amy agreed. But why? I can't figure that out. Well, I thought out loud, a new shirt may be nice, but if someone gives you the shirt because they think you look good in it, then there's a whole new layer of meaning behind the gift. So maybe the real gift is love, Amy mused, and since we can't wrap that up and put it under the tree, we give the shirt. Later that night, as Netta and I sat in the living room and talked, Amy walked in and plopped into a recliner. Question, she announced. Yes? If love is the meaning of Christmas, then it's probably also the purpose of life. But how can you learn to love? Well, Netta said, they say if you serve people, then you learn to love them. That doesn't make any sense, Amy objected. I mean, I know it must be true, but I don't understand why. Maybe it's because when you serve people, you're not looking for what they can do for you, I pointed out, and that puts you in an unselfish mode, and that's the only way to experience true love. And whenever you take care of something you love, Netta added, then it matters to you. It becomes yours in a way, whether it's your child or dog or hometown, and that makes you love it even more. So you love things because you love them. Precisely, I agreed. The feeling of love leads to the action of loving and vice versa. Amy thought about that and looked satisfied. Question, she announced again. How can you tell if you're loving all the way? I guess if you're not losing yourself in service, I said, then you're not fully loving. Amy came downstairs in her pajamas later that night and handed me another poem. It's really good, I told her, smiling up at her before reading it a second time. I like it. I'm impressed. Amy looked pleased, then stood abruptly and left the room. What are you doing here anyway? What do you have to tell the world? Speak up, boys. Shout it out loud, girls. Do not hold yourself back. Because what are you doing here anyway? What's that thing inside, scraping, clawing, trying to get out? Open the cage door wide and set it all free, because that thing is you. It is your very soul. And what are you doing here anyway? Why don't you love everyone around you with your whole incredible, beautiful heart? Why do you keep all that amazing emotion locked up inside for no one else to see? Are you afraid? I don't care. Are you hurt? I don't care. Are you unsure? I don't care. Are you vulnerable? So what? Open yourself up. Let it go. Let it flow. That's why you're here. That is the only reason you are here. I love you. I care. I care too much, and I am afraid, but here I am. I love you. I care. I'm saying it out loud now. I am saying this out loud. I love you. I care. I am here. It's really good, I told her, smiling up at her before reading it a second time. I like it. I'm impressed. Amy looked pleased, then stood abruptly and left the room.